A tax that marked up the price of a bottle of wine in this province will be removed a year to the day after it was introduced. As part of the budget, the Alberta government announced it will be getting rid of the so-called ad valorem tax on April 1st. That's a fee customers have to pay depending on a bottle's value. Producers in BC are celebrating the move of getting rid of the tax, but they want to see more action to help improve sales. Ron Kubek is the owner of Lightning Rock Winery in Summerland in BC's Okanagan region. What did you think when you saw this tax on wine is being lifted on April 1st?
Well, I think along with the restaurants and liquor stores in Alberta, the wineries in BC celebrated it. And it was unique in the fact that the government admitted that, hey, this was a mistake. It was hurting Alberta consumers, it was hurting producers, it was hurting agents. And I give the Alberta government credit for recognizing a mistake. Too often we have a lot of governments that don't recognize they made a mistake and they fix this one. So for us, it's great news.
Can you walk us through how the ad valorem tax works and how that was affecting you?
Alberta always had the simple tax and it was based on the cost per liter or the cost per bottle. And that was really easy for all of us to understand. What they did in April 1st last year is they introduced a 15% tax on a tax. So it made equivalent wine being sold into Alberta, or any spirits being sold into there, anywhere from 28 to 42% tax. And so this really affected everybody. One, we all hate a tax on a tax. And for the restaurants in Alberta, if they're buying the wine and they're marking it up because that's where their profit is, this was now an extra kick in the stomach, and it made it more expensive for Alberta consumers. We noticed about a 50% drop in our Alberta customers ordering wine because we line itemed it. We showed where the government had put this new tax on. We didn't hide it. And people just were just dumbfounded that the government would do this. And so I really give credit to Premier Smith and Minister Dale Talley for going, they listened to the Wine Growers BC, Wine Growers Canada, the Alberta Restaurant Association, the Alberta agents, and producers like myself who constantly were sending emails and writing letters, and they made a change. And for that, I say congratulations. And Alberta consumers should be happy. They can now get wine without that extra 15% markup on top of what they had already.
So a 50% drop in your sales to Alberta in the context of that tax, like how much of your wine ends up in Alberta?
Well, it'll be a lot more than it was.
Well, let's say before the 50% drop, over a year ago, how much of your wine was ending up in this province?
About $100,000 a year. And so, you drop that by $50,000 just because of a tax. And, I employ British Columbians, I employ Canadians. We had been talking with an agent there that wanted to increase our production and, sell upwards of between 500 and 1,000 cases of wine into Alberta. And, that just died. As soon as that tax came out, we didn't even go forward on it. So that represented a potential loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars. We have an event coming up in Calgary in April that we're heading to, Top Drop, it's a industry-focused event that Curtis Colt and his team put on. And they're really happy that we can now sell our wine. Alberta, they threw a wrench into it. We have to get registered as an agent versus being registered as a producer. So we're going through that right now, but we're really looking forward to it. But the big thing was the consumers that came out to the winery. I mean, the Okanagan is a place where a lot of Albertans like to vacation in the summertime. And people, when they came in and they found out about the tax, there's not a lot of nice things to say about the government. But I give Danielle Smith credit because she's the only government in Canada that's opening up compared to everybody else. I mean, I ship wine, Lauren, to the US at zero tariff. If I want to ship it to Ontario, it's 71%. If I want to ship it to Quebec, it's 120. Not that they already don't get enough from us. And then if I want to go to Eastern Canada, it's over 200%. So we have no free trade in Canada. And so what Alberta did is they just said, let's get rid of this bad tax. Let's get back to it. They raised the per bottle fee, but we can all plan for that. And so Albertans should be really happy that they have a government that actually listens, unlike other governments in Canada.
Okay, well, I hear you making your political points for sure. And I want to put this into the context of interprovincial trade barriers? I mean, you use the examples of taxation is part of it, a big part of it, and what you'd face trying to get into the Ontario market, the Quebec market. Like, how do you see this issue fitting into, and your business fitting into the larger issue of interprovincial trade barriers in the country?
Well, Alberta made the first move. Ontario, when Premier Ford said back in February last year on CNBC that, to Trump, take off your tariffs, we'll take off ours. I sent him an email and say, hey, you already are able to ship into BC tariff-free in, direct to consumer. Why don't you do that? And it led to meetings with their finance ministry, and it led to a lot of different things. But we still got stymied because it had to go back and deal with BC. And in BC, we've got a government that is unwilling to work with us or do any changes. I mean, Alberta, when you think about it in the context, they made a change within a year, which in government time is rapid. I mean, governments work at glacial
quick. I'll give you that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I give credit to the government. I mean, sometimes, it's easy for everybody to point fingers and blame the government for everything that goes on. Alberta's government listened to industry, they listened to consumers, and they made a change. The problem is the rest of Canada, through their liquor control boards and their obsessive taxation. The interesting thing, Lauren, about wine and spirits and that in Canada, we are taxed more per liter than gasoline. And it's just ridiculous that, Canadians can't buy Canadian wine, Canadian spirits at a price that better than what they can buy from around the world. I mean, around the world, 50 to 75% in wine countries is consumed locally or nationally, pardon me. In Canada, it's 12%. And so, we've got a big announcement coming out on March 9th, been working with some people. And so with a member of the opposition in terms of what we got going. And so we'll have a big announcement publicly on March 9th about hopefully what we can get done with direct to consumer. But the big problem is that the governments just have this, I liken it to, someone said, what do you think about liquor control boards in Canada? And someone was tapping their arm and going, they're like addicts. They're addicted to the taxation of it. And if people realize the amount of tax that people pay on alcohol in Canada, they'd be dumbfounded. Alberta's will work out to us. It'll work out, depending on the price of my wine, anywhere from 8 to 14% as a tax, because it's a flat bottle tax. That's okay. But 120% or 200%, there's something wrong in Canada. Canada doesn't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem by governments that just don't get it. And, I commend Alberta for moving rapidly, and I just wish every other province did. And, we fight so many battles.
Yeah, I hear you. You've made some waves by sending these emails to Alberta and to Doug Ford and otherwise. So we'll have to leave it there for time. But Ron, I appreciate you taking our call. Thank you.